Look at you. You made it back for episode 3 of Booksmart Lifedom. Congrats. Welcome. I aim to record these on the Friday before they come out on Monday to give myself just enough time to sit down and edit, and if I need to make a correction or anything like that, I can go back and do it. But lately I've just been tired. So this is Sunday, March 1st. Welcome to March. You survived the first 2 months of 2026. You should be proud. I don't know. I feel like I'm proud for every month I make it through ever since the shutdown back in 2020. And just with like I'm not going to call it a tailspin, but just where life has been going and how life has gone. It's interesting. I feel like it hasn't been a decline, but it necessarily hasn't been an incline either. It's more of I'd definitely say it's more flat. If I were to take the past 6 years and spread it out over one graph instead of looking at it month by month, it's definitely much more flat. High points, low points, all that stuff. I heard an interesting phrase today as I was kind of prepping for the show. I like to listen to other podcasts to get myself into the mindset to start doing Booksmart Lifedom. And an interesting phrase was tossed out about how there's always so much going on in the rearview mirror. And I paused it and I thought about that. And it's definitely right. That's definitely a true statement. But I think you have to also appreciate that the rear view mirror exists because you're propelling yourself forward, right? There will always be things in your rear view mirror, but as long as you can keep your eyes on the road, you can keep moving forward. But to push that aside, I'm still not really feeling exactly 100%. Definitely tired. So we'll see where this one shakes out. But I did write down all my notes throughout the week. This past week was an event called IGN FanFest, and I usually don't really pay attention to FanFest. But this year was special for me because Red Octane was revealing the game that they were making. And for those who aren't familiar, Red Octane is best known for having created the Guitar Hero franchise way back when, which was a big part of my life, mainly in influencing the kind of music I was getting into growing up. And I was just hooked, man. Way back when I was a wee lad in my town, which was only about 2 square miles big, there was what was just called the youth center there. And it was a place that was rather large. It was like the size of like a mobile home, I would say. But in there was a place for kids to just go. They could sign in. They would have, a bunch of game consoles there, ping pong tables, computers, and it was just a place for kids to go and to hang out. And that's where I sat down and I played the first Guitar Hero. A couple of the people that worked there, they knew, I was a rock and roll kid, or I was rock and roll adjacent. So they encouraged me to give it a shot. The first time I sat down and played Guitar Hero, I remember the first song I ever played. It was in Guitar Hero 1. I played The Trooper by Iron Maiden. And I didn't even know you were supposed to strum the controller. But I played it that first time and I was hooked. It was awesome. I had never played a rhythm game up until that point. But I was very much interested in all things Guitar Hero at that point. And when Guitar Hero 2 had come out, my parents had gotten me Guitar Hero 2 with a controller for the PlayStation 2. And it was the only thing I ever wanted to do. It's the only thing I wanted to play. I used to draw in my notebooks at school what the highway looked like with notes coming down it. I would wake up early on the weekends and my parents would tell me about how they would hear the clacking of the controller over in the living room. And it exposed me to a lot of music. I never really thought about bands like Lamb of God or Slipknot, or I'll be honest with you, I didn't even know Freebird existed until I beat that game for the first time. And you finish the final set list in Guitar Hero 2, and it gives you like 5 messages. It's telling you that they want an encore. Are you sure you want to do it? And you can hear someone in the crowd yelling, Freebird, Freebird. And then it pulls up. And I remember my initial reactions as being like, this is a slow song. You know, Freebird starts off very slow, very low. And then it just has this build up. And that solo went on for what felt like 30 minutes to me way back when. I don't know. I remember going back. I beat the game on the next difficulty the next day. I went from easy, I did on easy, then I did on medium, then I did on hard, and I did on expert. I haven't played a song on medium or hard, I think, ever since beating that game on expert. And then Guitar Hero 3 came out. And that was the one that had everybody's attention. That had the set lists that everybody remembers. Playing One from Metallica, playing Raining Death. That was when Through the Fire and the Flames got super popular with people. And that whole set list just fucking ruled, man. It was so good. And honestly, I already was like a solid Metallica fan at this point. But I think that's what really solidified it for me were the Guitar Hero games. And they are my all-time favorite band in the world. I could sit here and drone on. I could do an entire episode talking about each album, talking about what was going on with the band, what were the best live performances, you know, how Metallica is still relevant today, and all this other stuff. And so naturally, of course, when Guitar Hero Metallica came out, as if I wasn't already super into Guitar Hero, super into Metallica, as if I wasn't already happy with having Guitar Hero World Tour at this point, where they introduced drums and vocals and, you know, other instruments, as if I wasn't already content with that, and then being able to go like listen to Ride the Lightning on my iPod at the time. Holy shit. They took the 2 biggest things I cared about in my life and put them into one product, and it was donezo. It was game over for me, man. It was game over for me at that point. And I wasn't really a rock band kid growing up. I never had a rock band title. I would play it because my friends had it. I'd go over to their houses or bring my controllers over. That was definitely a different vibe, I would say. I never got another Guitar Hero after Metallica. I never bought another one, but it was always a game I found myself coming back to. I have a Guitar Hero tattoo on my forearm. I have several controllers in my apartment now. And I go back and I play a game called Clone Hero now, which was a fan project. Made it super easy for people to be able to import songs, be able to just sit down and play. Very, 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 very good fan project. It's something I still play most days of the week for at least, who knows, maybe I'll pick it up and play one song and then be done with it. You know, it's just still a part of my life. And it was because of these Guitar Hero games that got me super interested into music, that shaped the kind of music I would listen to, that would shape my appreciation for different music and different songs and different bands, that it felt like it was some level of divine intervention that I would spend a significant part of my life working in live music production. After high school, I didn't have any aspirations to go to college. And I was visiting my father, who lives in Florida still. I was visiting my father that first summer after I was done with school. And big big part of, me and my dad and like the things that we enjoy. Big thing of that is finding places that have good chicken wings. Is something that he and I could always share and bond about. It's not like the biggest part of our lives, but it's definitely something that we can bond over. And so we were sitting down at an all-you-can-eat wing night, and sitting across from me was one of his friends. And he asked me, and I was like, all right, so you're done with school. What do you want to do now? And I said, well, I've always been interested in figuring out and learning about and working in the music industry, being able to work for bands, to tour and things like that. My answer was probably a lot less put together than that, given I was 18. He said, all right, kind of raised a brow. And he said, well, if you ever want any help or want to figure out getting on tour, things like that, give me a call. We'll see if we can help. Fast forward some time after that, I ended up moving in with my father, living in Florida full time now. And I had been working a couple of jobs. I was working at a Starbucks at the time. And I was just kind of over it. I was 20 and I just didn't want to do it anymore. And I had thought back to that moment, and I shot a text message over to Corey. He sent me a message back. He said, we'll talk. A couple months after that, I was filling out the details, making sure everything I had to be away from home for a few months, because I was going on my first tour. I was brought down to West Palm Beach, Florida. It's where all of pre-production was happening. It's where they were figuring out how to set up the lights, how to pack everything into these trucks every day, what the stage was going to look like, and how to do all of that. And all the pre-production and everything was going on. And I was a kid with wide eyes and had not a single clue on what to do for any of it. And I was given tasks that were much more in like the production side of things to help set up X, Y, and Z from working in like an office every day. And then also, gathering things to put onto the bus from our riders every day, setting up coolers full of drinks and everything. There's a funny story about that specifically. I was instructed, go get all these drinks, go put them in coolers, but with ice and all that stuff, so they're ready for the end of the show. And I was like, all right, you got it. I'm not going to say I was the world's most innocent kid growing up, but I definitely as far as like bare bones things like that, I was not that kid. I didn't know. And not for nothing, the woman that I was working for, she was, skeptical. She was like, "You're a rowdy kid. You don't have to sit here and hide it from me. We're all cool here. I know you probably partied. You probably hung out, with your friends late at night after school, and went to parties and all this other stuff." No, it is not me at all. And she didn't believe it until I tried to fill up a cooler full of beer by putting all of the ice in first and trying to just forcefully shove the bottles into the ice of these coolers one by one. And she goes, "Oh my God, you weren't lying. You really don't do any of that." And I'm like, I don't. I don't. It's just so funny. It's so funny thinking back on that tour, how many coming of age moments were surrounded with that. How much growing up I did in such a small amount of time. There's a few hallmark points of my life I think about on a pretty regular basis about how I changed into the person who I had become. I never felt like that was something that happened gradually. I always felt like there was some major life event that came around and changed me from that. And thinking about that first tour, I don't know. I don't think that there was ever, I don't think I was ever the same kiddo, after that point. And for the better. I think everybody has these periods of their lives where they do a little bit of growing up or a bit of adjusting to where they are in their lives. And that definitely set me up for the rest of my 20s, I would say, as a man. Fast forwarding from there, though, I get injured on that tour about a week beforehand. It's pretty gnarly. I know I'm actually fast forwarding a bit too much. As the tour went on and as time progressed, and we're traveling from from state to state to city to city, stage to stage, I gravitate more towards helping out and doing things on the stage rather than more production-y kind of thing. And it was from there that I actually just kind of fully formed over and became what is called a set carpenter, where I'm building things on stage. I'm helping mark the stage up for all the things that are going to hang from the rafters for the day, unloading trucks, reloading trucks, moving these giant set pieces around for all the different acts that are performing. And I loved it. I loved every bit of that. I spent a summer during high school doing a carpentry job. And that was some of the most fun I had working a job up until that point too. I was all for it. But I get injured about a week left from the end of that tour, and they let me stick around, but I'm like hobbling around in crutches. And I'll never forget waking up that first morning after getting injured and getting up bright and early. It's like 7, 8 a.m. I can't remember exactly what our start time was. And hobbling out into the stage because I'm going to help do the chalk outlines for all the stuff we're going to hang from the rafters. And so I was just like, you go back and you go lay down in that goddamn bus. What the hell do you think you're doing? I just wanted to work. It's all I wanted to do. I was such an eager person to want to work. And, I wonder where along the way that became lost upon me, because I was an absolute workhorse in the music scene. That tour ends. We all go home. We do our things. And off of that, I get a job at the House of Blues in Orlando. It's where I ended up working, and that was my home venue for 5 years after that. It's the longest job I've ever had, working at that venue. And it's where I met some of my lifelong friends. I mean, we don't talk as much as we used to, but I try to keep up the best I can. Some of the most memorable shows I've ever worked were there. My first show there was actually a private event. We're doing a show. I'm there, and they're like, it's going to be a private event. This is going to be great because it's not going to be a lot of hustle and bustle. There's not going to be a billion things going on. You get to learn where everything is in the venue, how everything works, etc., etc. I put up a big thumbs up. I'm like, sweet. This was a company that exclusively dealt in selling and renting private jets. And their act that they had booked for their private event was Steven Tyler of Aerosmith. The first show I'm ever doing, and I'm like, holy shit. And I wipe the star-stricken, kid from my face, and it's like, it's time to work. It's time to do the stuff. It's time to do the thing. And we're loading everything off of the truck with all the rental equipment that came in for the day, this big piano, all of this stuff. It was super awesome. And I remember we were hanging out on the back loading dock, and I'm introducing myself. We're getting to know each other. And he just walks out. Steven Tyler just walks out onto the back deck, stops, says what's up, says hello, very brief, very kind guy in that moment, and just continues walking, goes off to wherever he's going off to. And that was just one of those moments where, and I feel like I've had a whole bunch of those moments over the course of my career, all these different artists that, who are just people. And it was a concept that I grasped pretty early on, going through life. My father, he plays in a hardcore band that has, they're one of the biggest hardcore bands in the world. And so I've been exposed to how the music industry works and what that looks like pretty much my whole life. But just musicians and celebrities being just people was a concept that was easy for me to grasp because I had been in that world for so long, and just getting to share these 5 minutes with all these different people is something I will never take for granted. Definitely will never take that for granted. So while I'm working there in my home venue, I get to go do more things. I go work at different venues around the Orlando area. I go on another tour. I go out on Warped Tour in 2017. And that was just a blast, for one. It was a great time. The people that I met out there, and the different bands that would go on to be some of these like insane successes after the fact, getting able to look back and having had toured with these people, it's a lot of stories that I could never tell in exactly one episode of this podcast. There's definitely an entire episode, and I know I say this a lot. I think I'm going 3 for 3 on saying I could do an entire episode on X, Y, and Z, but I definitely could do an entire episode just talking about what doing Warped Tour looked like. I did unfortunately leave that tour early, because I actually rolled into doing another tour for a friend of mine who I worked with at House of Blues, where they had fired their, I think it was their 3rd stage manager at that point. And he was like, listen, I just know the guy for the job. And that guy was me. And I switched gears. I swapped tours. I think I was gone for 5 months straight, 5.5 months straight. At that point, there was a break in the middle of the tour. But when I came home, I was actually moving out of my dad's place to go live with, and move in with some friends. So yeah, I never stopped quite working. It's just, I was just home. I was just packing and unpacking boxes. And then that tour came to a close. And then the great Adam gets diagnosed with diabetes-a-thon happens. And I stopped touring from that point because that was something that scared me. That's something that terrified me in my life. I was freaked out. I didn't want to tour with it ever again. I stayed and I worked at my home venue. I ended up doing, other jobs to make, ends meet. My time in touring, I only ever went on 3 different tours, across 2 years. But I still have a lifetime full of good memories to look back on. And it's so interesting that I can sit here and look back to all these moments in my life. And there was just one cohesive thought, and it was that I only ever genuinely became interested in all this stuff because I went to a youth center when I was in middle school and sat down and played a game called Guitar Hero. And that sent me on an insane journey where I got to see some awesome places, meet incredible people. And it's why one day in Davenport, Iowa, when I had a day off, I looked at my friend and I said, I think I'm going to get a tattoo today, which I almost immediately backed out of. But he said, nope, you said it. We're going to go get you that tattoo. And I got the 5 buttons tattooed on my forearm from a Guitar Hero controller. Well, I thought this one was going to be shorter because I'm just not feeling well. But you know what? When I write my book full of notes and when it's something I'm passionate about, you can trust that I can sit here and drone on and on and on and on about all of it. I hope you have a fantastic week. I hope the week last week treated you nicely. See you on Monday, March 9th for episode 4. Have a great week, everybody.